Theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive with Em and Warren.
Suzy Wrong, how are you?
Work?
Sorry, I forgot to push the button. How are you, Suzy?
I'm good. Have you done this week's homework?
I've done this week's homework. Now, you know I'm very fond of you.
Are you? Likewise.
Last night, I have to say, I was sitting there watching, and we are talking about ELLIE and ABBIE, which is on SBS On Demand. A few words came out of my mouth thinking, what on earth am I watching? Suzy, do you want to tell us about it?
Ellie's formal is coming up very soon, and she's taking this as an opportunity to come out as gay. Yes, it is 2020, and Australian high schoolers are going to their formals as LGBTQ couples. Ellie tells her mother that she plans to ask classmate Abbie to attend with her, but mum reacts somewhat negatively, which is a surprise for Ellie. Coming out, it seems, isn't quite as simple as she had originally thought. This is when her dead aunt Tara appears as a quote-unquote fairy godmother to provide much-needed guidance. Ellie and Abbie, now available on SBS On Demand, is a coming-out comedy. It is a sweet teenage romance, as well as a meaningful depiction of how queer generations connect. Ellie lives in Sydney, and through her aunt Tara's story, we are able to draw a line from 70s and 80s activism in our world-famous Mardi Gras through to the lives of our young queer Australians today. Ellie and Abbie is intent on viewers understanding that today's freedoms have come at a great cost. I must admit that I didn't find the film very emotionally involving, maybe because it is trying to do a lot over a quick 18 minutes. There is no doubting its sincerity, though, and being a first feature for writer-director Monica Zanetti, Ellie and Abbie is quite an achievement. Also, isn't it interesting to think that we all have queer elders in our families, whether we know it or not? Warren, do you know of any LGBTQIA family members from earlier generations, or are you the first to come out?
Do you know what? I'm the first to come out, but I definitely suspect, but of course, I'm from the background where it's just not spoken about. It was sort of, almost glaringly obvious, but everyone was very, very quiet. It was never spoken about. So, and the particular family members in general were just, I think they were labelled as being perhaps difficult to get with people, as opposed to saying, well, maybe they just don't want to form the types of relationships that you're expecting them to.
Was this someone from one generation above you?
A couple of generations above me. Yeah,
right.
Couple.
Wow.
How about you?
We don't have very much to do with our sort of extended family, but I know that lots of people. Actually, my father's oldest father was considered this really eccentric person who lived at home and never left home. Everyone else left, but he never left home. And there was sort of weird things about, and I think from that generation, people were weird when they don't get married. They were considered really strange. And on top of that, this particular guy lived at home. So I knew that story, and I often thought maybe he's a gay person who had, extraordinary difficulties, much more than even my generation, which is why he was thought of as being so strange and had to be hidden at home. I think every family has, our generation anyway, like if we were born in the 70s, 80s, I think we do hear stories about previous generations.
And thinking back now, and I think, this particular person had a lot of anger in them at times, and I think, wherever there's anger, there's always hurt. And in some ways, I wish I had been a bit older. And of course I'm making assumptions and I don't know the reality, but I wish I'd had the maturity and some of the insight that I have now, because I would have loved to have sat down, because I was close in a way, and said, hey, let's have a chat and maybe get a little closer. But certainly they were from the generation where it definitely was not spoken about at all, completely swept
it's the worst thing,
and really
it's
sad.
The worst thing you can bring up for discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But ELLIE and ABBIE, I agree with you. Look, I think I was frustrated with it because I felt that, they didn't give the whole protest movement the historical significance that I think it deserved. I felt like it was sort of glossed over a little bit, and I felt the reenactments weren't done really, really well. And I don't like it when people do that. They don't give, protests or, things of historical significance the justice that they deserve. And also I found, some of the reasons, like, someone was, and I don't want to spoil it, but the way that their life ended during the protest era, I felt like the whole fight for justice was, again, just glossed over. And that could have been sort of expanded a little bit more, particularly if they want to have that intergenerational integration between, the kids at school and what their people before them did in terms of fighting for justice. I just felt that they didn't expand on it enough.
I agree with you. A lot of it was touch and go. I think they were trying to create a teenage romance without it being meaningless and too shallow, which caused them to create this huge backstory that, that to any viewer would feel so much more significant than the romance that's unfolding. But eventually what happens is you get a little bit of everything and nothing really kind of touches you deep enough, I think.
Yeah.
It kind of like you said, glosses over. Every moment is just kind of sweeps past you, and then you're onto a different timeline or onto different characters. And I never feel like I kind of like anyone enough or feel close enough with any of the characters to be really invested in the story, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was no connection. And, of course, we're talking about ELLIE and ABBIE, which is on SBS On Demand at the moment. And I felt that when, the dead aunt would appear, I thought, how great would it be to have someone that was part of our family and identified as part of the LGBTQI plus community to come and guide us through. I mean, that would have been the most brilliant thing to happen. And I just thought, some of the advice was, it just wasn't deep enough for me. It was pretty superficial. I mean, things like you're different and that's great. To me is a bit of a cliche, and just to keep it at that superficial level.
Yeah, and ask Abbie if she likes AFL, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that was, again, stereotypical stuff. So, look, it didn't do it for me. And I felt like there was a bit of a struggle between like you said, the teen romance and, again, the history. And they never got that balance right in either of them.
Yeah, I think you can see all the intentions are there, and it was all very well-meaning. And in fact, I think some of it is quite well thought out. It's just the execution was difficult. I could see that they've taken on something that I wonder if it was much bigger than they had originally thought, because what we saw on the screen just felt like never quite got there.
Yeah, and I mean, Abbie, I think there was obviously a bit of history and trauma there as well. And I thought, oh, okay, great, there's some story here. What's going on with Abbie and how she's behaving? But again, it was kind of glossed over, and I wanted to know more about Abbie's story. I wanted to find out what really went on, but it was it was done and dusted in about 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah, there were a lot of great characters that we sort of caught a glimpse of, but just never had enough of scope, enough depth to get into their stories, unfortunately.
Now, did you think it was funny?
No.
I feel terrible saying that, Suzy, but I must admit, because I thought it was meant to be a comedy. I'm correct in saying that, am I?
Yeah, clearly. Like, there were some very big jokes that it's not that they didn't land. I just feel like they weren't bad jokes, but they were not big laughs. I don't think they were.
Yeah, there were no big belly laughs or anything like that.
No.
I asked Em, who isn't in here today, and I said, Em, what were your thoughts on it? And she sent them through to me, and she said she found the humour a little overdone and oftentimes too much and not funny at all. But something else that Em noticed too was Em was confused with the set because the foam was old and they used projectors in the school, but then there was a nice brand new Slim iMac as well.
Well, to me, there was no confusion because they're certainly children of today. Well, teenagers of today, because all this discussion about coming out, that the stresses weren't like from their fellow students. It was the grown-up stories that were giving them, some drama. And so in a way, I enjoyed watching two young girls coming out without a lot of hassle from their school and from their fellow students. I thought that was a valuable thing for us, especially, slightly older people, to observe and to see that our, all our activism, all our efforts actually have paid off in some sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think and Em's sent through something as well. She's saying she appreciated the storyline as well, but felt that, we've watched 3 coming-of-age stories recently, and that the other 2 examples were much better. They were well done. And I agree with Em there. I think the last couple that we've watched have been executed much better than what this one was.
Yeah, and what were they called? Well, First Day?
First Day, that's right, yes.
Right. And what was the other one? Oh, and Heartstopper.
Heartstopper, which we spoke about last week, which I've noticed a lot of people have been watching as well, which is good. And, I quite like that one. But, we are talking about ELLIE and ABBIE on SBS On Demand. Something that did annoy me in it, Suzy, as well, was I found the music cuts in. And I don't know if that was just me, but I found it cuts in at all weird times. And then you can be in the middle of a scene and it sort of changes abruptly.
Yeah, it is pretty abrupt. I think that the film so lacks a lot of subtlety. It's not nuanced enough in a lot of ways, including the music. And you can observe, like, when you notice it, and you almost notice how you don't usually notice these things that actually do a lot of work with your emotions. And in this case, the music, you could really feel it coming in and going out, which I don't think is really, how it should work in a film. That those things are meant to connect with the emotions, not really with your ears. So, another thing that wasn't great in ELLIE and ABBIE.
But you know what? I'm glad we watched it, and it's all. We're not always going to hit the mark with what we watch.
Yeah, and we have to be very supportive of people who are making stories like that, because these stories are brand new.
Yes.
They're brand new to us. We've never seen them. It's only in 2020, 2022 that these stories are coming up, and let's give them more support. Let's watch them when we can.
Absolutely. Now, Suzy, what's our homework for next week?
Next week, we're tuning into a different kind of teenage lesbian movie.
Okay.
Crush on Disney Plus is about a teen girl joining her high school track team to get closer to her crush, only to find out she's getting closer to another teammate. Who would have thought we'd be consuming overtly queer content from Disney?
I know. I'll be surprised. So it's called Crush, and it's on Disney Plus.
That's right.
I'm looking forward to it, Suzy. When will we see you again?
Thank you, Warren. I'll see you next Tuesday.
See you, Suzy.